Hi everyone, this is part 2 of my response to a commenter who left some comments beneath the video I did on detransition and regret, and who claimed that trans-identifying people are being marginalized and criminalized in America. I ended that video saying that I believe transgenderism to be a harmful phenomenon born of American culture, and that brings me to the first thing that my commenter said that I'm going to respond to this time. I am well read on the subject of gender ambiguity, which has representation across all cultures. In fact, in some indigenous societies, a third gender is accepted. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not sure that gender ambiguity has representation across all cultures, but I made a whole video entitled Third Gender Cultures, and I put it in my series called Awful Arguments by Trans Activists, because the existence of these cultures is seized upon by people who don't know anything about them to justify what I would refer to as Western-style transgenderism, and which I would contend is a completely different animal. Those who resort to the multi-gender culture argument quite often present such cultures as if they are progressive. What I found in my research is that there is nothing progressive about them. In most of them, third and sometimes fourth so-called genders are invented to accommodate those who do not fit traditional ideas of how mostly men, but in a small minority of cultures, women too, should be. If young people do not fit very rigid ideas of masculinity or femininity respectively, they are likely to be designated a different gender with very specific rules about what they are allowed to do and not to do. There is no choice involved, although not all of them are totally unhappy about it, and there are reasons for that. But in modern industrialized societies, I would argue that the progressive thing to do is to let people be free to express themselves however they like, stopping short of the point where their choice impacts on the rights, the safety, the privacy, the dignity of anyone else. I feel like I've said words to this effect dozens of times in different videos and elsewhere, and nobody has yet come back with a better idea. The next sentence from the commenter. So, I don't wish to see people who are truly transgendered through some kind of not understood alchemy of genetics and environment to be persecuted. Interesting choice of word, alchemy. Isn't that what they called whatever passed for science in a pre-science era? Certainly fits the bill here. The notion, though, that there is any such thing as true trans does not and cannot, in my opinion, stand up to scientific scrutiny. People who go to great lengths to try to escape their sex may be truly distressed or truly deluded in thinking it's possible, but it doesn't mean they are truly transgendered, because there is no such thing. The more I hear from trans-identifying people, the more convinced I have become of that. Not sure why you feel the need to add that you don't want to see a particular group of people persecuted. I wouldn't expect that anyone who actually bothers to watch my videos would want anyone persecuted. I certainly don't. In fact, the reason or a large part of the reason I got involved in this fight in the first place was because of the persecution of those with dissenting voices against gender ideology, which seems to be every bit as bad, and in some cases worse, in the US as everywhere else in the West. My commenter said, your use of a screenshot of a headline that Jazz Jennings is having more surgery proves exactly what. Was the point somehow not clear enough? Let's have a look. Jazz Jennings. regardless of his recent video claiming everything is hunky-dory, his journey has been in the public domain, and nobody's going to convince me that that young man has ended up in a better place than if he hadn't transitioned at such a young age. He is one of countless cases that I know of that point to a need to find a better way of helping kids like him without leading them to believe that they can be a kind of member of the other sex by taking wrong sex hormones and mutilating their genitals. And she goes on to say, to me, it just invites further abuse of this person and her family. Okay, firstly, I'm a very tiny YouTube channel using information that is in the public domain thanks to Jazz and his family. I'm not some undercover reporter who acquired this information by underhand means. Just Google Jazz Jennings and it's there for anyone to see. The suggestion that I am in any way responsible for any negative consequences suffered by this family who have allowed TV cameras into their home for years and used their son as a cash cow reveals some pretty distorted thinking on your part, if I may say so. The reason I showed a headline about Jazz having more surgery was to illustrate the pitfalls, the risks of medically transitioning a boy before puberty. This is a terrible thing that is being done. To me, it's criminal and people should know about it, and if by some remote chance I can get that message across to any parents who are thinking of doing the same to their son and dissuade them from doing so, I would regard that as a worthy achievement. Who knows, it might even prevent your child from hating you in the future, as is the case with this young British man who posted this a few days ago. My parents deserve life imprisonment without parole for allowing me to transition under 18. My parents are just as guilty as my doctors and therapists. I hate my parents. Some of you may say the parents are innocent, but I completely disagree. Now, without knowing the full story here, I still feel that the medical and other professionals are primarily responsible. They don't have to go along with this insanity, regardless of what parents say. But in America, where trans-identifying people are supposedly being marginalized and criminalized, some states are trying to pass laws allowing underage kids to medically transition without their parents' consent, and even trying to criminalize parents who oppose it. Obviously, different things happen in different states, and this is possibly the most divisive issue of our time, but I'm not particularly impressed with the arguments that trans-identifying people are the ones suffering oppression over there. Finally, my commenter takes quite strong exception to this clip, which I played in the video on detransition, and in particular to what I said about the woman who is presumably the teacher or another staff member at the school. The clip shows a teenage girl announcing that she's a guy and her friends cheering. She tells them her new name and they cheer some more. At one point she gets a bit emotional, saying that her family are still using her real name and calling her she and her, and the friends are really love bombing her, and it all looks very cultish, which is why I also showed some of that clip in the video explaining why I call those enthralled to gender ideology a cult. This is an extraordinary and bizarre phenomenon, but it's not an isolated incident. We see it happening on social media sites all the time. Teenagers who are so brainwashed that they think someone announcing that they are what they are not and can never be, and disregarding the possible consequences if she follows through and starts getting all the medical stuff. If you don't find that disturbing, then I'm astonished, and I urge you to think about it a bit more. The commenter says, presenting a silly 5-second TikTok clip with no context or provenance noted, featuring stupid kids who, for all we know, are pulling a prank. If it was 5 seconds, I'd show it again, but it was about a minute long, and it quite obviously wasn't a prank. But even if it was a bit of play acting for some, I don't know, some kind of school project or whatever, for which they all deserve Academy Awards, by the way, the point is that this is exactly what is happening in real life. I don't know what more context is needed. It was quite clear what was happening, and so was the point that I made about it. Why the cheering? If she follows through on her announcement, she will probably at the very least be taking cross-sex hormones for the rest of her life, and these have potentially serious consequences for her health. That's not something to celebrate. So I really don't understand what the objection to my showing that clip was based on. That we don't know where or exactly when it took place seems pretty lame to me. The comment continues. Then directing your comments towards a seemingly bewildered older woman standing in the frame as part of the problem? What precisely should she have done, do you think? She didn't look bewildered to me. She was calmly smiling, but let's just hear what I did say about her. I would like to know who this woman here is. She's wearing a lanyard with ID. Is she a teacher? Certainly many teachers and others who work with kids are indulging this ideology, and that's a scandal, in my opinion. That is the totality of what I said, but it was apparently enough to incense my commenter into mentioning it 3 times in 2 comments, which seems a bit of an overreaction to me. But then she mentions that she's a university teacher herself, which may explain her defensiveness. In one of the comments, she says, "Was it necessary to point out the woman in pink? She stood silently during that ridiculous video. What was she supposed to have done? Teachers are being targeted unfairly in this debate. Your carelessly expressed opinions regarding teachers." I take quite strong exception to that. There is nothing careless about my opinions or the fact that I express them or the manner in which I do so. Who have no power at the moment, by the way, to challenge the claimed gender of a student if they wish to keep their job. Fair point. Maybe if she had stood there looking disapproving and unhappy instead of smiling benignly, or if she'd simply taken herself out of the frame so she wasn't seen in the video, she would have lost her job? Surely it would take a bit more than that. This, for example.
Jessica Tapia was fired as a teacher from Harupa Valley High School for refusing to hide students' gender preferences from parents.
If I were to ever find out about a student's gender or pronoun preference, that I was to withhold that from parents. Said, "Are you asking me to lie to parents?" And they said, "Yes, we are talking about minors. Their brain is not fully developed. The decision-making portal in that brain it's not fully developed, and they need their parents at this time for everything they're going through, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you name it."
Now that's outrageous, but you are saying on the one hand that trans-identifying people are being marginalised, but on the other hand, teachers can lose their jobs for not going along with gender identity. Can you not see the contradiction there? How the one claim undermines the other? Firing professional staff for not going along with cultish nonsense doesn't sound like marginalisation of those promoting the nonsense. As for teachers being unfairly targeted by the other side, well, you don't substantiate that claim, and some American teachers do post videos of themselves on social media boasting about the nonsense they are imparting to their young charges, which, as I said in that last video, is despicable. I've no way of knowing, of course, how much of a problem this is in the US, which is why I haven't banged on about it before, but here are a few examples.
Now, with my students being second graders, I had to make sure that my lesson was appropriate for that age group. Simply said that a transgender person is born in a boy or girl body, and then in their heart they know that that doesn't match who they are, and so they might then identify by a different gender.
keeping those old-fashioned stereotypes alive and well then. No danger of telling them that there is no one way that a boy or girl should be in terms of their personalities and interests. However they feel, whatever they are into is fine, and there's no need to pretend to be anything else. It gets worse.
Lastly, I explained that it could be a boy that's a girl that's a boy, or someone who feels like neither. Now, why I felt okay sharing this was because they know that I identify as neither. I go by mix and not Mr. or Miss.
Oh, get out of here. You're obviously a woman and you're teaching impressionable 7 to 8 year olds that you don't like the fact that you're a woman and that you choose not to be one, as if that is even possible in any meaningful sense. And she's not the only one. There are loads more. I'll just show a couple.
I'm a non-binary elementary school teacher, so here's how I talk to my students about pronouns and such. Hi, my name is Mix K. It's mix. So kind of like cookie mix or mixing bowl, that sort of thing. That's how it's pronounced.
So I'm not allowed to be out as trans non-binary at school.
You're a teacher?
I live in Louisiana and it sucks here. So of course my response to this is to be as obnoxiously queer as possible.
What a wonderful role model. How are these narcissists getting jobs anywhere near kids? And how are they allowed to use these kids to validate their twisted ideological agendas, like this one?
Hi, I'm Linz. I'm a queer and trans educator and children's performer, creator, writer. You might know me from my web series Queer Kid Stuff, where I talk about gender and sexuality stuff for all ages with a preschool audience in mind. We need to talk to preschoolers about sexuality and gender because any later is too late. This is the age when children start to self-identify. They start to understand themselves and in relation to the world around them. They need to understand different gender diversity because the Academy of Pediatrics actually says that most children have a solid understanding of their gender identity by the age of 4, and that is inclusive of cis as well as trans and non-binary kids. Preschoolers need to understand sexuality because of the world around them. They might not identify with a sexuality yet, but their parents do, and their friends' parents do. And in order to understand different family structures and other people's experiences and develop empathy, they need to understand queerness.
If you think that's bad, get a load of this.
I teach in an explicitly trans-affirming high school. We have gender support plans. We have a gender-affirming wardrobe at our school. We have binders on demand for our students, and other shapewear can easily be ordered. We have students that express themselves in all manner of different ways, and I couldn't be prouder to work at a school that's so amazing. If you would like to have your school also be an explicitly trans-affirming school, let me know. Maybe we can figure something out.
I don't have the words to convey the horror and disgust at the knowledge that there exists a school like this one does anywhere in the world. I thought UK schools were bad, but this exceeds my worst nightmares. And I don't mean because they have students that express themselves in all kinds of different ways. Yeah, different people have different personalities, different tastes, big deal. But providing kids with binders, which come with a host of serious physical risks. I have no words. I got really down at researching this video. I didn't know how bad things were in some of the schools, and I'm going to stop here. My commenter did say a couple more things that I may or may not address in future. I don't know, but I'll end this one by saying that I have yet to be convinced that trans-identifying people are being marginalized and criminalized in America. If that were true, why the hell is this happening? Bye for now.